So here's a question that I often get from men who are trying to quit pornography. Is masturbation a sin? Before I answer the question, is masturbation a sin, I want us to walk through a framework as we think about what is sex and why God has designed sex. So let's take it from that point of view. When God had designed man and woman, he created them to be one. We read that in Genesis. The two shall become one flesh. The man shall leave the woman, and they two shall become one flesh. Well, what does it mean for you to become one flesh? That means that you become one in your mind and in your emotions. It means that you become one in your purposes in life. You become one in your direction. And so, as we think about sex, the two becoming one flesh is not necessarily just a physical act, but it is an emotional act to bridge a husband and a wife together. And so, as we're thinking about it from that standpoint of view, the first thing we notice is that God designed sex not as something simply for one person or the individual, but for the couple as a whole. Sex was designed to unify man and woman. Now, secondly, we got to look at the purpose of marriage. The purpose of marriage, as we read in Ephesians 5, is to display Christ and the church. And so the husband is supposed to love his wife like Christ loved the church. What does that look like? Unconditional love? What is unconditional? Meaning that you're not going to love her because she just loves you back. Volitional, meaning that you make a choice to love. You see, that's how Christ loved his disciples. He chose to love him. He chooses to love us. And so this is a very sacrificial love. You're dying to self. That's what love is. Agape love, God kind of love, is a sacrificial love at its core. And so the husband's supposed to love his wife. The wife is supposed to respect her husband, right? Submit or respect. What does it mean to submit? It just means that she is going to think of his interests more than her own. She's respecting his decision making, respecting his role that God has put him in. And then at the end of that chapter, we read that this is a great mystery, right? And it's supposed to display, marriage displays Christ and the church. It displays the gospel. Okay, so number one, sex was designed to unify man and woman. And then marriage as a whole is to display the gospel. We are supposed to be living not for ourselves, but for the other person, to show the sacrifice that was visible in the gospel of Christ sacrificing himself and showing forgiveness, etc. How in the world does this connect with, is masturbation okay? Well, because at the core, we see that sex is a serving act. God has designed it to serve the other person. And you will notice in your own life, and you read from others, that the best sex is the kind of sex where you are serving your spouse. Now today, in our very sexualized culture, we have spun that on its head. We have created sex to be about us, about me. Sex has become a selfish act instead of a serving act, which is why now we're asking the question, is masturbation a sin? Well, if sex was created to serve, then in masturbation, who am I serving? If sex was created to unify me and my spouse, then who am I unifying through my act where I am alone committing this? So when we look at it from that perspective, masturbation then is selfish. Masturbation then is about me and what I can get. And this is exactly why when people even get married, their sex life sucks. Because a husband comes into this marriage having been addicted to porn for so long, and what does porn teach? It teaches that sex is all about you. It teaches that who cares about the other person and satisfying them? What can I get out of this? And so ultimately then, masturbation, if it is not serving others, if it is selfish, the question is it okay? And I would say that masturbation is not okay. I would say masturbation is a sin because it is a selfish act, just like everything else we do for ourselves. Just like greed is for yourself. Just like pride is all about yourself and you getting what you just want in your life. And so think about it from that biblical big picture perspective, and it helps you answer the question, is masturbation a sin? And this is why, on the other hand, when I talk to guys who stop masturbating, and they are not looking at porn, one of the biggest things they're doing is serving other people. and they find satisfaction in serving others. And the more that they're humble and the more that they serve others, the less they have this drive to masturbate and satisfy their fleshly desires. At the core, sin is selfish. Only proud men watch porn. So hopefully this answered the question for you. Is masturbation a sin? And you can walk away from this one of two ways. Number one, you can be like, Dennis, I get what you're saying, but man, I still have this huge drive. Well, then you got to ask yourself this question. Are you serving in your life as a whole, or are you doing a bunch of selfish acts? Are you like on Instagram all day watching Netflix, thinking about how you can serve yourself, or are you walking around in the body of Christ wondering, how can I serve other people? How can I help other people in my life? And so I'd recommend for you, find ways you can serve other people. And so hopefully I challenged you a little bit to think about masturbation from a more biblical perspective. And if you like this kind of content, give me a like and subscribe, because I post now 2 videos a week. I want to give you guys as much content as possible, answer as many questions as you have, so that you can live a life of impact through integrity. And if you're looking for a community that is free, that has a bunch of resources on how to quit porn, you can find it in the link down below. I highly encourage you. Community is what you need to be able to overcome sin for good in your life.